Jammy Myers looks like someone's uncle. The kind of black man who wears crewneck sweaters from Target, drives a 10-year-old Camry with good tread on the tires, and knows his daughter's teachers by their first names because he shows up. On this Wednesday morning at Lincoln Heights Elementary, walking through hallways decorated with construction paper, autumn leaves and multiplication tables, Jammy carries himself the way he's carried himself for 3 years now, quietly, politely, invisibly. But invisibility, for a man like Jammy, is a tactical choice. Before he was Maya's dad, before the sweaters and the parent-teacher conferences, Jammy Myers spent 15 years as a federal investigator whose security clearance was higher than most senators. He's the man they called when congressional testimony needed protecting, when witnesses vanished and needed finding, when the kind of secrets that collapse governments needed someone who understood the weight of silence. He retired to be a dad. To pick Maya up from school and help with science projects and not miss another dance recital because of a subpoena in another state. The sweaters are real. The Camry is real. His love for his daughter's terrible knock-knock jokes is real. But when Amanda Collins steps into his path in the crowded hallway, her voice already raised before he's fully registered her presence, Jammy understands immediately what's happening. He's seen it before, the snap judgment, the assumption, the way her eyes take in his skin color and somehow calculate, uninvolved parent, problem, someone who can be spoken to this way. What Amanda Collins doesn't know, what she can't possibly know, because Jammy has worked very hard to make sure people like her never know, is that the quiet man she's about to publicly humiliate in front of a dozen witnesses is still, technically, authorized to walk into the Department of Justice and have access to files that most FBI agents will never see. The badge is in his wallet. He never meant to use it here. Before we go any further, hit subscribe, because powerful men don't always look the way people expect, and you don't want to miss what happens when assumptions meet reality. The morning had started the way most Wednesday mornings started, with Maya burning toast. "Dad," she yelled from the kitchen, her voice carrying that particular pitch of 8-year-old panic that meant nothing was actually wrong. "The smoke thing is beeping again." Jammy set down his coffee and walked into the kitchen where Maya stood on her step stool, waving a dish towel at the smoke detector with one hand while holding a piece of charcoal that used to be bread in the other. "What have we learned about the toaster settings?" he asked, reaching up to silence the alarm. "That 4 is too high," Maya said solemnly. "But 3 doesn't make it crunchy enough. So what's the solution?" She thought about it. 3.5. 3.5, Jammy agreed, pulling out fresh bread. "But the toaster doesn't do halves, so what's your next best option?" 3, and then watch it really carefully and pop it up early if it's getting too dark. There you go. Problem solving. He dropped the bread in, set it to 3, and leaned against the counter while Maya gathered her spelling homework. This was the life he'd chosen. Toast management. Spelling words. The complicated politics of third-grade friendships where someone named Becca had apparently stolen someone named Jordan, and Maya was caught in the middle trying to be friends with both. It was so far from his old life that sometimes Jammy had to remind himself it had been real. The late-night calls from D.C. The hotel rooms in cities he couldn't tell anyone he'd visited. The weight of knowing that if he missed a detail, if he read a situation wrong, people died. He'd been good at it. Maybe too good. They'd kept promoting him, kept giving him the cases no one else could handle, until he realized Maya was 7 years old and he'd missed 5 of her 7 birthdays. The toast popped. Perfect golden brown. "See?" Maya said, triumphant. 3 works if you pay attention. "Indeed it does," Jammy said, spreading butter while Maya added an alarming amount of cinnamon sugar. 30 minutes later, he pulled into the drop-off line at Lincoln Heights Elementary in the Camry that Maya had named Silver, because, as she'd explained, he's silver and old, like a grandpa, so he needs a simple name he can remember. "You nervous about your conference?" Maya asked, gathering her backpack. "Why would I be nervous?" "Because Miss Collins is kind of mean sometimes." Maya said it matter-of-factly, the way kids state obvious truths. "She gets real loud when she's mad." Jammy felt something tighten in his chest. Is she mean to you? Not really mean. Just, she says stuff like, this is disappointing really loud so everyone hears. And she always mentions that some kids have parents who follow through and some kids don't. Maya shrugged. I think she thinks you don't help me with homework because sometimes I forget to turn it in. But I do help you with homework. I know. I'm just bad at remembering to put it in the basket. She opened the door. Anyway, don't let her be loud at you, okay? I'll do my best, Jammy said. Maya grinned and hopped out, her backpack bouncing. Jammy watched her join the stream of kids heading toward the entrance, her purple jacket visible until she disappeared inside. Don't let her be loud at you. Jammy sat in the idling Camry for a moment longer, watching the last few stragglers hurry through the doors. He thought about the badge in his wallet, tucked behind his Costco card and his library card. He hadn't looked at it in months. Hadn't needed to. He'd built a good life here. A quiet life. The kind of life where the most stressful part of his day was whether Maya's toast was too dark. At 9 a.m., he pulled into a visitor parking spot, locked the Camry, and headed toward the main entrance for his 9:15 conference with Miss Amanda Collins. He was just Maya's dad. That's all anyone needed to know. The hallway smelled like industrial cleaner and pencil shavings. Jammy signed in at the office, got his visitor badge, and followed the secretary's directions to room 203. The walls were covered with student artwork, turkeys made from traced hands, essays about what I'm thankful for, in wobbly third-grade handwriting. He was early. The conference wasn't until 9:15, and it was only 9:08. Jammy stood outside room 203, deciding whether to wait in the hallway or peek in to see if Miss Collins was ready. Mr. Myers. The voice came from behind him, sharp enough that Jammy turned automatically. Amanda Collins stood 10 feet away, arms crossed, her expression already set in something between irritation and accusation. She was younger than Jammy had expected, maybe 30, with her hair pulled back in a tight ponytail and a lanyard full of keys and badges hanging around her neck. I'm glad you could make it, she said, in a tone that suggested the opposite. Shall we? She walked past him into the classroom without waiting for a response. Jammy followed, already reading the situation. Her body language was closed off. Her tone was aggressive. This wasn't going to be a conversation, it was going to be a lecture. He'd been in thousands of interrogations, witnessed hundreds of confrontations. He knew how this worked. Inside the classroom, Amanda gestured to a student desk. You can sit there. It was deliberate, putting him in a child's desk while she remained standing. A power play. Jammy sat anyway, folding his hands on the small desk surface. So, Amanda began, pacing in front of the whiteboard. Maya is a bright girl. I want to be clear about that up front. She has potential. Here it comes, Jammy thought. But she's not living up to that potential, and I think we both know why. Amanda stopped pacing and looked directly at him. Homework completion is at maybe 60%. She's constantly losing papers, forgetting assignments, not following through. And when I send notes home, I rarely get responses. I respond to every email, Jammy said quietly. Eventually. Sometimes days later. Amanda's voice was rising. And here's what I notice, Mr. Myers, the students who succeed in my class have parents who are involved. Who check the backpack every night. Who establish routines and consequences. They don't make excuses. Jammy kept his voice level. Maya and I have a homework routine. Every night at 6. I check her work, we review anything she's struggling with. Then why isn't she turning it in? Amanda's hands went to her hips. If you're really checking every night, why am I getting blank papers? Why did she tell me last week that she didn't know how to do the fractions homework when that was supposed to be parent-assisted? Because I was out of town for 2 days at my mother's funeral, Jammy said. Maya stayed with a neighbor. I emailed you about it. Something flickered across Amanda's face, maybe embarrassment, maybe annoyance at being contradicted, but she pushed through it. That's one instance. I'm talking about a pattern, Mr. Myers. And I'm going to be very direct with you because I think Maya needs someone to be direct. She stepped closer. I've been teaching for 9 years. I see a lot of families. And I can always tell which parents are going to show up for their kids and which ones are going to make this harder than it needs to be. The room felt very quiet. Down the hall, Jammy could hear another class reciting something in unison, their voices a muffled chorus. I show up for my daughter, Jammy said. You're here today. That's something. Amanda's tone made it clear that something wasn't much. But showing up once for a conference isn't the same as showing up every day. At home. With structure and expectations and follow-through. Jammy could feel it building, the familiar pressure behind his eyes that meant his patience was reaching its limit. He'd spent 3 years learning how to swallow this kind of thing. The assumptions. The implications. The way people looked at a black man in a Target sweater and decided they knew his whole story. Miss Collins, he said carefully, I understand Maya's homework completion needs to improve. I'm happy to discuss strategies. I don't need strategies from you, Amanda interrupted. I need you to do your job as a parent. That's the strategy. There it was. The line crossed. Jammy stood up slowly, unfolding from the too small desk. I think maybe we should table this conversation and reschedule when we can have a more productive. I'm being productive. Maybe you're just not used to people being honest with you. Honest, Jammy repeated. Yes. Honest. Amanda's voice was loud now, carrying beyond the classroom. You seem like a nice enough guy, but nice doesn't get math homework turned in. Nice doesn't teach responsibility. And I'm sorry, but I've seen this before, single dad, works a lot, thinks just being pleasant is enough. I'm not a single dad. Maya's mother died when she was 4. Amanda barely paused. Okay, widower, same principle. You're overwhelmed. You're doing your best. But your best isn't good enough for Maya right now, and someone needs to tell you that. Jammy felt something shift inside him. A door he'd kept carefully closed starting to swing open. Miss Collins. And before you get defensive, she continued, stepping even closer, her finger coming up to point at his chest, I'm saying this because I care about Maya. Someone has to advocate for these kids when their parents won't. They were standing in the doorway now. The hallway had people in it, 2 other teachers walking past with coffee mugs, a janitor replacing paper towels in the bathroom, a few parents waiting outside other classrooms for their own conferences. Everyone could hear this. Amanda's voice carried. People like you are why these kids can't succeed. You think showing up and being nice is enough, but it's not. These kids need discipline. Structure. Parents who actually. Miss Collins. A new voice, sharp and administrative. They both turned. Principal Olivia Reynolds stood 5 feet away, her expression carefully neutral but her eyes hard. Is there a problem here? No problem, Amanda said quickly, though her face had gone slightly pink. Mr. Myers and I were just discussing Maya's progress. Olivia looked at Jammy. Mr. Myers, is everything all right? This was the moment. Jammy could de-escalate. Could smile politely and say everything was fine and walk away and let Maya finish the year with a teacher who clearly had already decided what kind of parent he was. Or he could stand his ground. Miss Collins was just explaining, Jammy said quietly, that people like me are the reason kids can't succeed. The hallway got very quiet. Olivia Reynolds' expression shifted into something carefully diplomatic. Perhaps we should move this conversation to my office. I don't think that's necessary, Amanda said, her voice defensive now. I was simply being direct about Maya's academic struggles and the need for parental involvement. By telling Mr. Myers that people like him are the problem. Olivia's tone was still measured, but there was an edge to it. I didn't mean it like that. Amanda glanced at the growing audience in the hallway, 3 teachers now, plus 2 parents who'd stopped to watch. I was talking about uninvolved parents generally. You were pointing at me specifically, Jammy said. Because you're Maya's parent. Amanda's composure was fracturing. This isn't about, I don't care about, I'm talking about parenting, not anything else. What else would it be about? Jammy asked. Amanda's mouth opened and closed. The answer hung in the air, unspoken but obvious to everyone watching. Olivia stepped forward. Miss Collins, I think you should return to your classroom. Mr. Myers and I will finish this discussion in my office. I'm in the middle of explaining a student's academic situation, which you can put in writing and send to Mr. Myers via email. Olivia's voice had gone from diplomatic to firm. Right now, I need you to step back into your classroom. For a moment, Amanda looked like she might argue. Then she turned on her heel and walked back into room 203, closing the door hard enough that it almost slammed. Olivia turned to Jammy. Mr. Myers, I apologize for what just happened. If you'll come with me. Am I the problem here? Jammy asked quietly. Excuse me. Because it seems like your teacher just publicly accused me of being a bad parent, made assumptions about my involvement in my daughter's life, and when called on it, suggested I was being defensive for objecting to her assessment. Jammy kept his voice calm, but he could see people listening. So I'm asking, am I the problem? Is this how Lincoln Heights handles parent conferences? Olivia's expression tightened. Of course not. But I think a private conversation would be more appropriate. More appropriate for whom? Jammy asked. Your teacher felt comfortable having this conversation in a public hallway. Why do I need to move it to a private office? One of the watching teachers, an older woman with glasses on a beaded chain, made a small sound that might have been approval. Olivia noticed. Her tone shifted, became more formal. Mr. Myers, I understand you're upset. But I need to ask you to lower your voice and come with me to discuss this situation calmly. My voice is calm, Jammy said. I haven't raised my voice once. Your tone. My tone is quiet and measured. I haven't used profanity. I haven't made threats. I asked you a simple question, is this how your school handles parent conferences? With public accusations and stereotypes? Olivia's jaw tightened. I don't appreciate the implication that this school operates on stereotypes. Then how would you characterize what just happened? A teacher having a difficult conversation about a student's progress. A teacher told me people like me are why kids fail, Jammy interrupted, still quiet. In front of witnesses. After making assumptions about my parenting based on, what, exactly? The fact that I'm a widower? The fact that I work? Or something else? The something else hung there. Olivia's face went very still. When she spoke again, her voice had dropped into full administrator mode, careful, measured, designed to shut down conflict. Mr. Myers, I can see you're upset, and I want to address your concerns. But I cannot have this conversation in a hallway. If you refuse to move to a private setting, I'm going to have to ask you to leave and we can reschedule. Are you asking me to leave the school? I'm asking you to either come to my office or leave the building, yes. On what grounds? Olivia blinked. I'm sorry. On what grounds are you asking me to leave? I have a scheduled conference. I haven't violated any school policies. I haven't raised my voice or made threats. So on what grounds are you requiring me to leave? You're being disruptive. I'm standing in a hallway asking questions. Your presence is creating a scene. Miss Collins created the scene. I'm responding to it. Olivia's patience visibly frayed. Mr. Myers, I don't know what you think you're accomplishing here, but I need you to make a choice, come to my office, or leave. Those are your options. Jammy looked at her for a long moment. He could see exactly what was happening. The teacher had overstepped, made it racial whether she'd intended to or not, and now the principal was trying to shut it down by removing him from the situation. Not by addressing what had happened. Not by holding the teacher accountable. By making him leave. It was so familiar it almost hurt. And if I refuse both options? Jammy asked quietly. Olivia's expression went hard. Then I'll call security and have you escorted out. For standing in a hallway. For refusing to comply with administrative instructions. Which I'm allowed to question, aren't I? I'm a parent with a scheduled appointment. Don't I have the right to ask why I'm being removed? You have the right to file a formal complaint through the district office, Olivia said, her voice tight. What you don't have is the right to disrupt my school. The teacher with the beaded glasses shook her head slightly and walked away. The other watchers were starting to drift back to their classrooms, reading the situation. Administration was closing ranks. Jammy felt the old instincts rising. The part of him that had interrogated hostile witnesses, that had navigated congressional hearings, that knew exactly how power worked and how to use it. Principal Reynolds, he said quietly, I need you to understand something. I don't need to understand anything except whether you're going to comply. You're making a mistake. Olivia's expression turned to stone. Are you threatening me, Mr. Myers? No, Jammy said. I'm giving you an opportunity. An opportunity to what? To de-escalate this situation before it becomes something neither of us wants it to be. Olivia stepped closer, her voice dropping. Let me be very clear. I don't respond well to intimidation. You're a parent who's upset about a conference that didn't go well. I'm sympathetic to that. But you don't get to stand in my hallway and imply threats because you didn't like what you heard. I'm not threatening anyone, Jammy said. I'm asking you to reconsider how you're handling this. And I'm telling you that if you don't leave this building in the next 30 seconds, I'm calling security. To remove a parent from a parent-teacher conference. To remove someone who's refusing to follow administrative instructions. They stood there, the tension thick enough to cut. Jammy could see the calculation in Olivia's eyes, he was just another parent. Maybe he'd complain to the district. Maybe he'd pull his kid out of the school. Either way, she had the authority here, and she was going to use it. You should call security, Jammy said quietly. Olivia blinked. What? You said you're going to call security. You should do it now. Mr. Myers. Because when they get here, I'm going to need to verify their credentials. And they're going to need to verify mine. Something shifted in Olivia's expression. I don't understand. You will, Jammy said. He reached for his back pocket. Olivia tensed. Stop. Don't reach for anything. Jammy froze, his hand halfway to his wallet. Around them, the hallway had gone completely silent. The few remaining teachers had stopped walking. Two parents stood frozen outside a classroom door. I'm getting my identification, Jammy said calmly. You asked me to leave. I'm going to show you my ID so security can properly document who they're removing. Keep your hands where I can see them, Olivia said, and there was real fear in her voice now. Jammy felt something cold settle in his stomach. This was it. The moment where assumption became action. Where a black man reaching for his wallet in a school hallway became a threat. He raised both hands slowly, palms out. My wallet is in my back right pocket. It contains my driver's license and other identification. I'm going to remove it slowly. Is that acceptable? The formality of his language seemed to register with Olivia. She hesitated, reading him again. Slowly, she said. Jammy moved with deliberate care, reaching back, extracting his wallet, bringing it forward. It was worn brown leather, the corners soft from years of use. He opened it. His driver's license was in the front window. Behind it, his Costco card. His library card. His insurance card. And behind those, the badge. Jammy pulled out his driver's license first. James Marcus Myers, he said, handing it to Olivia. That's my legal name. Maya's father. 10-year-old Camry in the parking lot is registered to me. Olivia took the license, glanced at it, handed it back. Mr. Myers, I don't need to see. You asked for identification, Jammy said. I'm providing it. He pulled out the Costco card. Member since 2019. Maya and I go every other Saturday. She likes the free samples. Olivia's expression was confused now, the anger fading into uncertainty. What are you doing? Showing you who I am, Jammy said. He pulled out the library card. County Library System. Maya's checked out 43 books this year. Mostly fantasy novels. Dragons, specifically. Mr. Myers. You made assumptions about who I am, Jammy continued, his voice still quiet. About what kind of parent I am. What kind of man I am. Based on what you saw, a black man in a Target sweater who doesn't respond to disrespect the way you think he should. I never said anything about. You didn't have to. Jammy reached back into his wallet. But before you call security, before you have me escorted out, before you make this official, I need you to see one more piece of identification. He pulled out the badge. It was smaller than a credit card but heavier, the weight of the metal significant. Federal seal embossed in gold. Security clearance level printed below his name in letters too small to read from where Olivia stood. Jammy held it up. The hallway seemed to hold its breath. Olivia stared at the badge. Her face went through several expressions in rapid succession: confusion, recognition, disbelief, and then, finally, something that looked like fear. That's. She started. Department of Justice, Jammy said quietly. Federal investigator. Retired, but the clearance is still active. Lifetime authorization. He tilted the badge so she could see the clearance level. That's higher than most FBI field agents ever see. Higher than most senators have access to. Olivia's face had gone very pale. I spent 15 years protecting congressional witnesses, Jammy continued, his voice still calm, still measured. Tracking down threats to federal officials. Handling cases where one mistake meant people died. He lowered the badge. I retired 3 years ago because I wanted to be Maya's dad. Full time. No more missing birthdays. No more late-night calls from D.C. He put the badge back in his wallet, behind the Costco card. I chose to be invisible, Jammy said. I chose the Target sweaters and the Camry and the quiet parent-teacher conferences. Because that's what being a good father looked like to me, being present, being normal, being there. Olivia seemed unable to speak. But your teacher, Jammy continued, made assumptions about that choice. She saw a quiet black man and decided he was uninvolved. Irresponsible. Part of the problem. And when I objected to that characterization, you backed her up. You threatened to have me removed. I didn't. Olivia's voice came out hoarse. She cleared her throat. I didn't know. You didn't need to know, Jammy said. You needed to treat me with basic dignity as a parent who showed up for a scheduled conference. That's all. The watching teachers had gone very still. One of them, the woman with the beaded glasses, had come back and was standing at the edge of the hallway, listening. Olivia seemed to realize they still had an audience. Her face flushed. Mr. Myers, I think we should absolutely move this to my office now. I want to discuss. Now you want to discuss it, Jammy said. I apologize. I misread the situation. You read it fine. You just read it with assumptions. Jammy closed his wallet and put it back in his pocket. And now that you know who I am, or who I was, you're afraid of what I might do. What calls I might make. What investigations I might trigger. That's not. It absolutely is. Jammy's voice was still quiet, but there was steel in it now. 5 minutes ago, you were going to have security remove me for asking questions. Now you're apologizing and asking me to your office. The only thing that changed is what you know about my background. Olivia's jaw worked. I made a mistake. I'm trying to make it right. Are you? Jammy asked. Or are you trying to contain it? The question hung there. Quick question, do you think Jammy should have shown the badge sooner, or was he right to wait? Drop your take in the comments, because what comes next changes everything. Olivia Reynolds straightened her spine, and Jammy watched her shift into damage control mode. He'd seen it 1,000 times, the moment someone realized they'd miscalculated badly and started working backwards to minimize the fallout. Mr. Myers, she said, her voice taking on a formal quality, I want to be very clear. I absolutely did not intend to suggest that you were being removed from the school for any reason related to your race or background. My concern was purely about maintaining an orderly environment. In a hallway where your teacher was pointing at me and raising her voice, Jammy finished. But when I responded calmly, I became the disruption. You were refusing to follow administrative instructions. I was asking questions about why I was being given those instructions. Jammy kept his voice level. There's a difference. Olivia glanced at the watching teachers, clearly calculating how much of this conversation was going to make it into the break room by lunch. Mr. Myers, I would really appreciate the opportunity to discuss this privately. So you keep saying. Because I think there's been a misunderstanding. There hasn't. Jammy met her eyes. I understand perfectly what happened here. Your teacher made assumptions based on stereotypes. When confronted, she doubled down. When I objected, you sided with her and threatened to have me removed. All of that is very clear. I was trying to de-escalate. By escalating your authority. Jammy could see Olivia's face getting tighter with each interruption. You went from, let's talk privately, to, I'll call security, in about 30 seconds. That's not de-escalation. You were being confrontational. I was asking questions. In a tone that was clearly hostile. My tone, Jammy said quietly, has been calm and measured this entire time. I haven't raised my voice. I haven't used profanity. I haven't made threats. If my questions feel hostile to you, that might say more about the questions than about how I'm asking them. Olivia's face flushed. She glanced again at the audience, then back at Jammy. When she spoke again, her voice had hardened. Mr. Myers, I've apologized for the misunderstanding. I've offered to discuss this privately. I'm not sure what else you expect me to do. I expect you to address what actually happened instead of calling it a misunderstanding. I'm not going to stand in a hallway and debate semantics. It's not semantics. It's the difference between I'm sorry there was a miscommunication and I'm sorry my teacher treated you in a racist manner and I backed her up. The word hung in the air like a grenade. Olivia's expression went very cold. I think you need to be very careful about the accusations you're making. I haven't accused anyone of anything. I described what happened. You just called Miss Collins racist. I said she treated me in a racist manner. There's a difference. Jammy held her gaze. Whether she intended it or not, she made assumptions about my parenting based on how I look. And when I pushed back, you assumed I was the problem because a black man asking questions must be hostile. That is not what happened. Then what did happen? Olivia opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. A teacher had concerns about a student's academic progress. A parent became defensive and refused to engage productively. I attempted to redirect the conversation to a more appropriate setting, and the parent refused to comply. That's one version, Jammy said. It's the accurate version. It's the version that protects your teacher and makes me the problem. You are making yourself the problem by refusing to move past this. Jammy felt something settle in his chest, a familiar coldness that came from years of watching people lie with absolute conviction. Principal Reynolds, I need you to understand where this goes from here. Is that a threat? It's a clarification. Jammy kept his voice quiet. You have a choice. You can acknowledge that your teacher crossed a line, apologize genuinely, and discuss how to prevent this from happening to other parents. Or you can stick with your version of events, ask me to leave, and see what happens next. Olivia's eyes narrowed. What happens next? I file a formal complaint with the district office describing exactly what was said and how you responded. I request copies of any security footage from this hallway. I document the names of every witness who heard Miss Collins tell me that people like me are why kids fail. Jammy paused. And then I let the district decide whether that constitutes the kind of environment they want parents to experience. You're threatening to sue. I haven't mentioned lawyers. I'm describing the formal complaint process that I assume Lincoln Heights has in place for exactly this kind of situation. Olivia's jaw was tight enough that Jammy could see the muscle jumping. You really want to go down this road? Over a teacher having a difficult conversation about your daughter's homework? Over a teacher publicly disrespecting me based on racial assumptions, Jammy corrected. And over an administrator who threatened to have me removed rather than address those assumptions. I'm not going to let you intimidate me. I'm not trying to intimidate you. I'm giving you information about what comes next so you can make an informed decision. The decision, Olivia said, her voice hard now, is that either you leave this building voluntarily, or I call security and have you escorted out. Those are still your only options. Even now. After everything I've told you. Especially now. Olivia crossed her arms. Because now it's clear that you came here looking for a confrontation. You wanted this to escalate. You wanted an excuse to threaten complaints and play the victim. Principal Reynolds, Jammy interrupted quietly, I'm going to give you one more chance to stop talking. Something in his tone made her pause. I came here, Jammy continued, his voice still calm but with an edge now that hadn't been there before, for a parent-teacher conference about my daughter's math homework. That's all. I didn't come looking for a fight. I didn't come planning to show you my badge. I came as Maya's father. He took a breath. But your teacher decided I was a certain kind of parent before I said a word. And you decided I was a certain kind of threat when I questioned your authority. Both of those decisions were based on assumptions that have nothing to do with who I am or what I've said. Mr. Myers. I'm not finished. The words were quiet, but they cut through Olivia's attempted interruption. You want to call security? Fine. Do it. But when they get here, I'm going to show them my credentials, and then I'm going to walk out to my car, and then I'm going to make some phone calls. Because while I retired from the DOJ, I still have a few contacts. I still have people who take my calls. And I promise you, Principal Reynolds, a federal civil rights investigation into your school's treatment of black parents is not something you want on your desk. Olivia's face had gone from red to white. You can't. I absolutely can. The question is whether you're going to make me. They stood there in the hallway, surrounded by witnesses who weren't even pretending not to listen anymore. The teacher with the beaded glasses had been joined by two others. A custodian had stopped his work and was standing with his mop, openly watching. Jammy could see Olivia doing the math. Weighing her authority against his connections. Her version of events against the witnesses. Her pride against her career. What do you want? She finally asked, and her voice was barely above a whisper. I want, Jammy said quietly, for you to admit what happened here. Olivia Reynolds looked like she'd aged 5 years in 5 minutes. The color had drained from her face, and when she spoke again, her voice had lost all its administrative authority. Can we please move this to my office? It wasn't a demand this time. It was a plea. Jammy considered her for a long moment. The old instincts told him to press the advantage, to make this as uncomfortable as possible, to extract maximum contrition. But the part of him that had spent 3 years trying to be a different person, a quieter person, a father person, knew that crushing Olivia Reynolds wouldn't actually solve anything. Maya still had to go to school here. Fine, he said. The relief that crossed Olivia's face was almost painful to watch. She turned to the watching teachers. Don't you all have classes to prepare for? They dispersed slowly, reluctantly, clearly planning to compare notes the second they were out of sight. Olivia led the way down the hallway toward the administrative offices. Jammy followed, aware that they were being watched through classroom windows, that this story was already spreading, that by the end of the day every teacher at Lincoln Heights would know some version of what happened. The principal's office was exactly what Jammy expected: inspirational posters about leadership and excellence, a desk covered in neat stacks of paperwork, framed photos of Olivia shaking hands with various local officials. She closed the door and gestured to one of the chairs across from her desk. This time, they were adult chairs. Olivia sat down heavily. For a moment, she just stared at her desk, and Jammy got the sense she was gathering herself, trying to figure out how to handle a situation that had spiraled completely beyond her control. I need to understand something, she finally said, looking up at him. What is it you actually want from this conversation? I told you. I want you to acknowledge what happened. I've apologized. You've said, I'm sorry for the misunderstanding. That's not the same thing. Olivia's hands flattened on the desk. What do you want me to say? The truth. Jammy leaned back in his chair. That your teacher made assumptions based on racial stereotypes. That she treated me with disrespect she wouldn't have shown a white parent. That when I objected, you assumed I was the problem and threatened to remove me. All of that happened, and saying it was a misunderstanding doesn't make it go away. If I admit that, you're protecting yourself legally by pretending it was something else. Olivia closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, they were tired. Mr. Myers, I've been a principal for 6 years. Before that, I taught for 8. I am not a racist person. I have dedicated my career to helping students from all backgrounds. I don't care, Jammy said quietly. Olivia blinked. Excuse me. I don't care whether you think you're racist. I don't care about your career dedication or your intentions. I care about what happened in that hallway and whether you're going to take responsibility for it. I can't just, Olivia stopped herself, started again. If I formally acknowledge that racial bias occurred, you understand what that means for this school. For Miss Collins. For me. Yes, Jammy said. I do. They sat in silence for a moment. What if I offered a compromise? Olivia's voice was carefully controlled now, the administrator back in charge. I will personally apologize to you for how this situation was handled. I will have a conversation with Miss Collins about appropriate language and assumptions. We can transfer Maya to a different classroom, with a teacher who won't treat her father like a stereotype. Olivia flinched. A teacher whose personality might be a better fit. And the formal acknowledgement? I can't do that. I'm sorry, but I can't put it in writing that this was a racial incident. The liability implications. So you'll apologize privately, have a quiet word with your teacher, move my daughter, and hope I go away. I'm trying to find a solution that protects everyone. Except you're not protecting me, Jammy said. You're protecting your school. Your teacher. Yourself. I'm the one who has to accept that what happened will be swept under the rug so long as I get some private apologies and Maya gets moved to a different class. Mr. Myers, please try to understand my position. I understand it perfectly. You're a principal who's been put in a bad situation by a teacher who crossed a line. You know if this becomes official, there will be consequences. Maybe district investigations. Maybe media attention. Maybe lawsuits. So you're trying to make it go away by giving me just enough to maybe satisfy me. Olivia didn't deny it. Jammy leaned forward. But here's what you're not understanding. This isn't about getting Maya into a better classroom. This is about making sure no other parent has to stand in that hallway and get lectured about being people like you, while staff members walk by and do nothing. I hear what you're saying. Do you? Because I've been very patient here. I've stayed calm. I've followed you to your office. I've listened to your explanations and your compromises. But what I haven't heard is you saying, clearly and without qualification, that what happened was wrong. Olivia met his eyes. It was wrong. Say all of it. Mr. Myers. Say it. What specifically was wrong? Olivia's jaw tightened. She looked at the closed door, then back at Jammy. When she spoke, her voice was quiet. Miss Collins made inappropriate assumptions about your parenting based on racial stereotypes. I failed to recognize that and responded in a way that compounded the problem. What happened was wrong, and I'm sorry. Jammy studied her face. It wasn't everything. It wasn't a formal acknowledgement or a promise of systemic change. But it was real. Thank you, he said. Olivia looked surprised. So we can move forward? Yes. Jammy stood up. On certain conditions. The wariness came back into her expression. What conditions? Miss Collins writes a formal apology. Not an email. An actual letter that acknowledges what she said and how it was inappropriate. I want that in my file. I can make that happen. Maya stays in her classroom. She likes some of the kids in there, and I'm not disrupting her friendships because her teacher has a bias problem. But Miss Collins doesn't get to have another conference with me alone. If there are concerns, you're present. Or another administrator. Olivia nodded slowly. Agreed. And you institute some kind of training. For all staff. About implicit bias and professional communication with parents. I don't care if you bring in an outside consultant or do it internally, but it happens. Mr. Myers, I can't promise. Yes, you can. Because if you don't, I file my complaint anyway, and then the district mandates training along with everything else. This way, you get to control the narrative and maybe actually prevent this from happening again. Olivia stared at him for a long moment. You really were an investigator. Still am, Jammy said quietly. I just investigate different things now. Like whether my daughter's school is a safe place for her father to show up. Point taken. Olivia pulled out a notepad and started writing. Formal apology from Miss Collins, supervised conferences going forward, staff training on implicit bias. Anything else? Jammy thought about it. There was more he could ask for. More he could push. But Maya had to finish third grade here, and scorched earth wasn't going to help anyone. That's enough, he said. For now. Olivia finished writing and looked up. For now. I'm going to pay attention, Jammy said. To how Maya's treated. To whether that training actually happens. To whether this changes anything or just gets filed away as, that time a parent complained. It won't be filed away. We'll see. They stood there for a moment, the weight of the conversation settling around them. Can I ask you something? Olivia said. Sure. Why didn't you just show the badge at the beginning? In the hallway. When Miss Collins when this started. Jammy considered the question. Because I shouldn't have to. I should be able to walk into my daughter's school as her father and be treated with respect. Not because I have credentials or connections or authority. Just because I'm a parent who showed up. Olivia nodded slowly. I understand. Do you? I'm beginning to. Jammy picked up his wallet from where he'd set it on her desk and put it back in his pocket. The badge went back behind the Costco card, where it belonged. I'll expect that letter from Miss Collins by the end of the week, he said. You'll have it. Jammy walked to the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. Principal Reynolds. Yes. I meant what I said about paying attention. But I also meant it when I said I chose to be invisible. I don't want to be the parent everyone's afraid of or walking on eggshells around. I just want to be Maya's dad. I understand. I hope so. Jammy opened the door. Because next time I come in for a conference, I'd really like to just talk about math homework. He walked out, leaving Olivia Reynolds sitting at her desk, already reaching for her phone to make calls that were going to be very uncomfortable. The hallway was empty now. Classes had started, and the only sound was the muffled rhythm of a teacher reading aloud behind a closed door. Jammy walked slowly toward the exit, his footsteps echoing on the polished floor. His phone buzzed. A text from Maya's neighbor, who picked her up sometimes. Conference go okay? Jammy stared at the message. How did you answer that? Well, I got called a stereotype, threatened with removal, and had to pull out federal credentials to get basic respect, but I did get an apology, so, mixed. He typed back, interesting. We'll tell you later. The office secretary looked up as he passed, her expression carefully neutral. Have a good day, Mr. Myers. You too, Jammy said automatically. Outside, the parking lot was bright with morning sun. The Camry sat exactly where he'd left it, unremarkable among the other cars. Jammy unlocked it and sat in the driver's seat without starting the engine. His hands were shaking. He hadn't noticed it in the moment, too focused on staying calm, staying measured, maintaining control, but now that the adrenaline was fading, his whole body was catching up with what had just happened. 3 years. 3 years of deliberately fading into the background, of being the quiet dad in the Target sweater, of letting assumptions slide because correcting them felt like more trouble than it was worth. 3 years of telling himself that invisibility was a gift he was giving Maya, a normal father with a normal life. And it had taken one teacher with a bias and one principal with a reflex to protect staff over parents to blow all of that apart. Jammy pulled out his wallet and looked at the badge again. It was just metal and plastic. An artifact from a life he'd left behind. But it had more power than anything he'd said, more authority than his calm tone or his reasonable questions. The badge was what had changed Olivia Reynolds' face from defiant to pale. The badge was what had shifted him from disruptive parent to someone we need to handle carefully. Not his words. Not his parenting. Not his dignity. The badge. Jammy closed the wallet and put it back in his pocket. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, then recognized the area code, Washington, D.C. Myers, he answered automatically, falling into old habits. Jammy. It's Sarah Chen. Sarah Chen. Former colleague, now Deputy Director of Civil Rights Division at DOJ. Jammy hadn't talked to her in 6 months. Sarah. Hey. What's? I just got a very interesting phone call, Sarah said, her voice amused. From a Principal Olivia Reynolds in your neck of the woods. She seemed very anxious to inform me that there had been a misunderstanding involving a parent at her school and wanted to assure me that it was being handled appropriately. Jammy closed his eyes. She called DOJ. She called the main number and asked for whoever handles federal investigator complaints about civil rights violations. They transferred her to me because your name flagged in the system. Sarah was definitely laughing now. Want to tell me what happened? Parent-teacher conference went south. Must have gone pretty far south for a principal to be calling DC within an hour. Yeah, well. Jammy rubbed his face. There were some assumptions made. I corrected them. She didn't like being corrected. It escalated. And you showed the badge. Eventually. Jammy. Sarah's voice shifted from amused to concerned. You know you're not actually authorized to use federal credentials for personal matters. I didn't use them. I showed them. There's a difference. Not really. She threatened to call security and have me removed from my daughter's school for asking questions, Sarah. What was I supposed to do? Silence on the other end. Then, what kind of assumptions? The kind that involve a black parent being automatically categorized as uninvolved and irresponsible. Ah. Sarah's voice went flat. That kind. Yeah. And the principal backed it up. Initially. She's reconsidering now. I bet she is. Sarah was quiet for a moment. You want me to actually open a file on this? I can, you know. Particularly if there's a pattern of racial bias in how they treat parents. Jammy thought about it. The idea was tempting. A real DOJ investigation would turn Olivia Reynolds' world upside down, force real accountability, maybe actually change things systemically. But Maya still had to go to school there. No, he said. I don't think so. She's agreed to some training, formal apology from the teacher, supervised conferences going forward. I'm going to see if that's actually enough. And if it's not, then I'll call you back. Fair enough. Sarah paused. How's retirement treating you? Besides angry principals. Jammy looked at the school building, where Maya was probably sitting in Miss Collins' classroom right now, working on math or reading or whatever third graders did at 10 a.m. on a Wednesday. It's complicated, he said. It always is with you. Sarah's voice softened. But seriously, Jammy. Are you okay? Was he okay? He just had to prove his worth to a teacher and principal who should have treated him with basic respect regardless of his background. He'd had to weaponize his past to defend his present. He'd shown his daughter's school a side of himself he'd been trying to leave behind. I will be, he said. Call me if you need anything. And Jammy? Yeah. I'm proud of you for not making her cry. The old you would have made her cry. Jammy surprised himself by laughing. The old me would have had her on a conference call with the Attorney General within 20 minutes. Exactly. Personal growth. Sarah's smile was audible. Give Maya a hug from Auntie Sarah. Will do. He hung up and sat in the quiet car for another minute, letting himself process everything. Then he started the engine, pulled out of the parking lot, and headed home to figure out how to explain to Maya why Dad's next conference was going to have Principal Reynolds in the room. Inside the school, Olivia Reynolds sat at her desk with her hands pressed flat against the wood, trying to stop them from trembling. The phone call to DOJ had been an impulse, a panicked attempt to get ahead of whatever complaint Jammy Myers might file. She'd thought if she called first, explained the situation, demonstrated that she was handling it, maybe it would take some of the teeth out of any formal accusation. Instead, she'd talked to a deputy director who clearly knew Myers personally and thought the whole thing was funny. Principal Reynolds, I appreciate you calling, but I'm going to give you some free advice. Jammy Myers is not a man who makes complaints lightly. If he tells you he's going to do something, he means it. But he's also not a man who goes scorched earth unless you force him to. So whatever agreement you made with him, I'd stick to it. Olivia had thanked her and hung up, feeling worse than before she'd called. There was a knock on her door. Amanda Collins stood there, her face anxious. Can I come in? Olivia gestured to the chair. Amanda sat down on the edge of it, hands twisting in her lap. I heard, Amanda said. About, what happened? After I left. Did you? Olivia's voice was flat. Mrs. Patterson told me. About the badge. Amanda's voice got very small. Is it true? He's really a federal investigator. Was. He's retired. But still. Olivia looked at Amanda, really looked at her. She saw a young teacher, barely 30, who'd probably never seriously examined her own biases. Who thought she was helping by being honest with parents. Who had no idea how her words sounded to someone on the receiving end. Amanda, Olivia said carefully, I need you to think very carefully about what you said to Mr. Myers this morning. I was just trying to get through to him about Maya's homework. You told him, people like you are why kids fail. Amanda's face flushed. I meant parents who aren't involved. While pointing at a black man specifically. I didn't, Amanda stopped. I wasn't thinking about race. I swear. I was just frustrated because Maya has so much potential and she's not turning in work, and I thought if I could just make him understand. By stereotyping him. That's not what I was doing. Olivia pulled out her notepad. I'm going to read you what Mr. Myers told me you said. Stop me if any of it's inaccurate. She read through the list, watching Amanda's face go from defensive to pale. I didn't mean it like that, Amanda whispered when Olivia finished. How did you mean it? Amanda's eyes were wet now. I have students whose parents genuinely don't show up. Who don't respond to emails or calls. Who send their kids to school without supplies or completed homework and then act like it's my fault when the kid struggles. And I'm tired of it. I'm tired of doing everything I can and having it not be enough because parents won't back me up. So when you saw a black father. I didn't see a black father. I just saw, Amanda stopped herself. Oh God. Yeah, Olivia said quietly. Amanda put her face in her hands. I need to apologize. You need to do more than apologize. Olivia set down her pen. You need to write a formal letter acknowledging what you said and why it was inappropriate. And you need to examine why you assumed Mr. Myers was an uninvolved parent when, according to his email history, he's responded to every single message you've sent and has attended every conference you've scheduled. He's late sometimes. He's a widower raising a daughter alone while working full-time. Late responses are understandable. Amanda looked up. I didn't know he was a widower. You didn't ask. You just assumed. Olivia softened her voice slightly. Amanda, I know you care about your students. I know you work hard. But caring isn't enough if it comes with assumptions about which parents deserve respect and which ones need to be gotten through to. Am I going to lose my job? Olivia considered it. In a perfect world, maybe Amanda should lose her job. But they were already short-staffed, and Amanda was genuinely good with the kids, and firing her would just move the problem somewhere else instead of fixing it. No, Olivia said. But you're going to do the training I'm implementing for all staff. And you're going to be on notice that if anything like this happens again, there will be serious consequences. Amanda nodded, tears spilling over. Can I talk to him? To Mr. Myers? To apologize in person? Absolutely not. You're going to write the letter, and then you're going to give him space unless he initiates contact. But. Amanda. Olivia's voice was sharp now. You don't get to make yourself feel better by forcing him to accept your apology face to face. You write the letter. You do the work. You change your behavior. That's it. Amanda wiped her eyes and nodded. After she left, Olivia sat alone in her office and thought about how close she'd come to making everything so much worse. If she'd actually called security. If she'd had Jammy Myers escorted out. If he'd filed that complaint before she'd had a chance to make it right. She pulled up the school district's website and started looking for implicit bias training programs. 3 hours later, she had one scheduled for the following month, mandatory for all staff. It wasn't enough. She knew it wasn't enough. But it was a start. Maya Myers came home from school that afternoon full of stories about the substitute art teacher who let them use real oil pastels and the boy who got in trouble for putting glue in someone's hair. Jammy listened from the kitchen while he made her a snack, letting her voice wash over him like proof that the world was still normal, still safe, still hers. How was your conference with Miss Collins? Maya asked eventually, taking her apple slices to the table. Jammy sat down across from her. It was interesting. Did she yell at you? She tried. Maya giggled. What did you do? Jammy thought about how to answer that. He could tell her about the badge, about the confrontation, about the whole ugly machinery of bias and power and consequences. Or he could give her the version that let her stay 8 years old a little longer. I reminded her that parents deserve respect, he said. And Principal Reynolds agreed. So is Miss Collins going to be nicer now? I think she's going to try. Good. Maya crunched an apple slice. Because she's actually really good at explaining fractions when she's not being mean. Out of the mouths of children, Jammy thought. The whole complicated mess reduced to, she's good at her job when she's not being mean. Hey, Dad. Maya was looking at him with that serious expression she got when she was thinking hard about something. Yeah, sweetie. When you were at work before, at your old job, did people ever be mean to you? Jammy's throat tightened. Sometimes. What did you do? Depends on the situation. Sometimes I had to be professional and let it go. Sometimes I had to stand up for myself. Sometimes I had to prove that their assumptions about me were wrong. Maya considered this. Like today? Yeah, Jammy said. Like today. Did it work? I think so. We'll see. Maya nodded, satisfied with this answer in the way only kids can be satisfied with uncertainty. Okay. Can I watch TV before homework? 20 minutes. She bounded off to the living room, leaving Jammy alone with his apple slices and his thoughts. His phone buzzed. An email from Olivia Reynolds with the subject line, "Follow-up to this morning's meeting." Jammy opened it. Mr. Myers. I wanted to confirm in writing the agreements we made this morning. 1. You will receive a formal written apology from Miss Collins by end of day Friday 2. All future conferences involving Maya will include myself or another administrator 3. I have scheduled mandatory implicit bias training for all staff on October 15th. Additionally, I want to thank you for your patience and professionalism in a situation where you had every right to be angry. You have given us an opportunity to do better, and I intend to make sure we do. If you have any concerns about Maya's experience at Lincoln Heights, my door is open. Respectfully, Olivia Reynolds. Jammy read it twice, looking for the places where she was covering herself legally, the phrases that left room for wiggle later. They were there, of course they were, but underneath the careful language, he thought he could detect something genuine. He typed back, Principal Reynolds, I appreciate the confirmation and the follow-through. I look forward to the training being the beginning of a larger conversation about how the school engages with all families. Thank you. Jammy Myers. Then he closed his laptop and went to join Maya on the couch, where she'd somehow convinced him to watch an episode of a show about dragons that she'd already seen 3 times. Friday afternoon, a letter arrived in the mail. Handwritten, 2 pages, on Lincoln Heights Elementary letterhead. Dear Mr. Myers. I am writing to apologize for my comments during our conference on Wednesday morning. When I said that, people like you, are why students struggle, I made an assumption based on stereotypes rather than on your actual involvement in Maya's education. This was unprofessional, hurtful, and wrong. Looking at my email records and conference notes, I can see that you have responded to every communication and attended every scheduled meeting. You have been an involved and supportive parent. My frustration about Maya's homework completion was not an excuse for the way I spoke to you. I am committed to examining my own biases and improving how I communicate with all parents. I understand that I have damaged your trust, and I will work to rebuild it through my actions, not just my words. I apologize. Sincerely, Amanda Collins. Jammy read it at the kitchen table. It wasn't perfect. The phrase, damaged your trust, put the focus on his feelings rather than her actions. But it was specific. It acknowledged what she'd actually said. It didn't hide behind vague language about misunderstandings. He folded the letter and put it in Maya's school file, right behind her report card and her immunization records. Evidence. Just in case. 3 weeks later, Jammy attended the mandatory implicit bias training. Olivia had invited him specifically, and he'd decided to show up, partly to see if they actually followed through, partly to see how the staff reacted. He sat in the back of the cafeteria while a consultant from the district office led the teachers through exercises and discussions. Some of them engaged genuinely. Some of them clearly thought it was a waste of time. Amanda Collins sat in the front row, taking notes. When the consultant asked for examples of times people had made assumptions, there was uncomfortable silence. Then the teacher with the beaded glasses, Mrs. Patterson, according to her name tag, raised her hand. "I saw something a few weeks ago," she said. "A parent was being treated disrespectfully in our hallway, and I didn't say anything. I just watched. And I've been thinking about that a lot since then." The room got very quiet. "What made you think it was disrespectful?" the consultant asked. "The language being used. The assumptions being made. The way authority was being used to shut down someone who was asking reasonable questions." Mrs. Patterson glanced back at Jammy. "I should have spoken up. I didn't. That's on me." After the training ended, Mrs. Patterson came over to where Jammy was standing. "Mr. Myers," she said. "I wanted to apologize for not saying anything that day. You don't owe me an apology." "I think I do. I teach my students to stand up when they see injustice. I didn't follow my own advice." Jammy looked at her, this woman who'd witnessed the whole thing and felt guilty enough about her silence to admit it publicly in front of her colleagues. "Thank you," he said. "For saying that." She nodded and walked away. Olivia caught up with him as he was leaving. "You didn't have to come to this. I know. But you wanted to see if we actually did it." "That," Jammy agreed, "and I wanted the staff to see me as more than just that parent who caused trouble." "You didn't cause trouble." "We did." Semantics. Jammy smiled slightly. "But I appreciate the distinction. How's Maya doing?" "Good. She got 100 on her fractions test." "That's wonderful." Olivia paused. "Miss Collins mentioned that in staff meeting. Said Maya had really turned a corner with homework completion. We found a system that works." Jammy didn't mention that the system was partly motivated by Maya's determination to prove that her dad wasn't uninvolved. 8-year-olds had long memories for slights. "I'm glad." Olivia held out her hand. "Thank you for giving us a chance to make this right." Jammy shook her hand. "Thank you for actually trying." He walked out to the Camry, where Maya was waiting in the back seat doing homework. She looked up when he got in. "How was the meeting?" "Good. Productive." "Did they do the training?" "They did." "Did Miss Collins cry?" Jammy laughed. "How did you know Miss Collins cried?" "Because Becca's mom is friends with Jordan's mom and Jordan's mom knows someone who works in the office and they told Becca's mom that Miss Collins cried during the training and Becca told me." Maya delivered this in one breath, the elementary school information network operating at full efficiency. "Well, I didn't see her crying, so I can't confirm." "But she probably did," Maya said with satisfaction. "Because she knows she was mean." Jammy started the car and pulled out of the parking lot. In the rearview mirror, he could see Maya returning to her homework, the whole incident already fading into just another thing that happened at one time. But for Jammy, driving home through familiar streets in his familiar car, the weight of the badge in his wallet felt different now. Not like a weapon he'd had to use, but like a reminder of who he'd been and who he'd chosen to become. He'd spent 3 years trying to be invisible. Maybe it was time to be visible instead, not as a federal investigator, not as someone with power and connections and authority, but as a black father who showed up and expected to be treated with dignity. As Maya's dad who wore Target sweaters and knew his daughter's teachers and checked homework at 6 o'clock every night. As Jammy Myers, who carried a badge he hoped he'd never have to show again but would absolutely use if someone made him choose between silence and respect. The Camry turned onto their street, and Maya started singing along to the radio, and Jammy thought, this is enough. This quiet life, this normal afternoon, this daughter who believes her dad can handle anything. This is exactly enough. If this story hit home, smash that like button and subscribe, because dignity, respect, and quiet power never go out of style, and the next story is already waiting for you.